Good morning.
Good morning.
I am at the Islamic Center in Irvine, and I'm talking to Imam Jamaal Diwan.
Mm-hmm.
Jamaal Diwan, and I'm speaking directly to you. You were born and raised in Southern California. Your mother was from Newfoundland, Canada,
Mm-hmm.
and your father from Karachi, Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
But you weren't. Your household strongly emphasized good manners, sports, and education. Most of your childhood was filled with playing basketball. Were you any good?
I always say that people who are any good never say they were any good.
Okay,
so,
good.
I'll refrain from comment.
Okay. Studying and spending time with friends. He did not grow up as a Muslim, although his father is a Muslim, right?
Yes.
But he didn't practice the religion necessarily.
Right. I mean, he's not outwardly observant, you could say.
Right. And it was not until your sophomore year at UCSD that you accepted Islam at the age of 19. And then you had, it says in your bio that your journey had a combination of multiple influences, including underground hip-hop
Mm-hmm.
and the autobiography of Malcolm X, reading the Quran, and meeting Muslims on campus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you went through major shifts in what you wanted to emphasize. And you ended up getting a BA in Third World Studies and a minor in psychology, correct?
Yes.
And then you went to Egypt.
Yes.
You got married. Went to Egypt
Married,
with
yeah.
your wife and studied for the better part of 7 years. And then at the end of that time, you got the equivalent of a law degree in Sharia from Al Azhar University in Cairo, correct?
Yes. The second oldest university in the world.
Is it?
Yeah.
And nearly completed an MA in Islamic Studies from the American University in Cairo. And here you are.
Yep.
And I think we're sitting at the Islamic Center in Irvine, and I think you worked here at one time, correct?
I did. I worked here for 2.5 years, from mid-2012 to the end of 2014. Yeah.
Doing what?
I was the resident scholar here. So kind of in Islamic centers, you have different positions. Usually you have the office staff and you have someone who kind of leads the prayers and things. That wasn't me for the most part. My job was more like religious and spiritual education and guidance.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a lot to do? I didn't ask you. I didn't say that I was going to ask you this, but do you have a lot to do with, or did you, when you were here, have a lot to do with teenagers and
Everything.
everything?
Everything. I mean, mostly a lot of my work revolved around teenagers. So high school, college,
Mm-hmm.
young professionals type age bracket, but also just the general problems of any community or issues of any community.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like a counselor in a way.
Basically,
Spiritual counselor,
yeah,
maybe.
basically a minister. You know, it's the
Right.
role of a minister.
Right. And that is what the imam means, right? Imam means, correct? I mean,
Yeah.
it's like pastor or something.
Basically, and especially in the American context, imam is usually used to equivalent of pastor or minister, priest,
Right.
rabbi type position.
Okay, I'm going to get right to the questions now. They're tough, okay?
Sure.
In light of the recent developments in France and around the world, everybody seems to be asking the same question. Why aren't the important Muslims around the world renouncing ISIS and the violent extremists?
Yeah, I think the better question is, why do people think that? Because, a small example is one time when I was working here at the Islamic Center, after one of these incidents, terrorist attacks, someone emailed and said, how come nobody from the same exact question?
Mm-hmm.
And I asked them, I responded, I said, did you actually search for this to find out if that's true or not? It's generally a good practice to check the truth of information that we receive. And so I typed it in for them. I looked at the first page on Google. The entire first page on Google was condemnations from Muslim organizations who were saying that this is unacceptable, it has nothing to do with Islam. So same thing with Paris, with ISIS, ISIS in particular. Actually, there were over 100 major Muslim scholars all over the world who wrote and co-signed an entire refutation of ISIS, saying that these people have wrong ideas, that their establishment of the Islamic State is invalid in the first place, that they do this wrong and they do this wrong and they do this wrong, and they refuted them from the detailed kind of hermeneutics of Islamic law itself. So it exists from there's no shortage of it.
And we could just Google it, right?
You could just Google it. You will find Muslims who kind of at some level you can relate to the sentiment as well, that at the same time that the major organizations and figures will condemn it, you'll find individual Muslims who feel like, why do I have to condemn it? It doesn't have anything to do with me. Some crazy people did something in some place and they said it in the name of my faith and it doesn't have anything to do with me. Why should I condemn it? I don't believe in it, type thing. Because people feel kind of, under attack all the time. It's not only non-Muslims or people who don't share the Muslim faith that are upset with these people.
Jon Stewart did something very good on that in the Daily Show. Did you happen to see it?
He's done so many good things in the last couple of years.
It spoke particularly to that
condemnation,
issue. Condemnation.
Yeah, it's even some of the local student groups and things have done some stuff on this. How come the Muslims didn't condemn the dysfunctioning of the traffic signal on such and such street?
Yeah. So. Well, I think that when somebody saes that, I think that that it's not showing maybe, and I'm not talking about you, whoever you were talking to. Does not show feeling for the death of somebody. Somebody died.
Absolutely.
People died. So I think that maybe it seems a little cool to say, why should I be concerned?
Sure. There's a couple sides to it. I think that's one of them, that it feels a little bit, making light out of the death of other human beings, which is never a good thing. The second issue that it has is that these people are claiming that they're doing it in the name of Islam. So there is somewhat of a necessity to speak out and say, no, these people don't speak for Islam, and it's not within the bounds of our faith. So that's there as well. But the other thing that people will say too is, how come we don't ask the average American to condemn civilian deaths in Pakistan or Iraq or anywhere else, which are much, much higher figures than some of these issues. But nonetheless, it's a problem. And
correct.
People are speaking out against it.
So the message is Google it, right?
Message is Google it,
Google
It's there. The condemnations are there from every major Muslim organization in America. All of them have these condemnations. Yeah.
So my second question is, and I'm going to have trouble with this name, do you agree with Imam Saeed Mustafa al-Kazwimi? Kazwimi. Is that right?
Don't worry. I'll fix it.
Thank you. Who was quoted as saying, Islamic extremism is the product of dictatorship and totalitarianism in Islamic majority countries. Do you agree with that? Oh, first of all, pronounce it for me.
Sure. Imam Saeed Mustafa Qazwini.
Okay, thank you. I'll never be able to get that
right.
Yeah,
it's okay. The names are tough. I struggled with them when I first became a Muslim too. Yeah. All these names I'm not familiar with. I agree and I disagree. I think that it's always difficult to distill major social political issues down to one cause. I don't think there's ever really one cause for these type of things. I think that there's a number of issues at play. One of them is totalitarian, authoritarian regimes in Muslim majority countries. That's one issue. Another issue is the consequence of Western foreign policy in a lot of these countries, which is, not to say that you justify that kind of response, but that is a factor. And it's a factor that you see across the board. Anytime these terrorist organizations do something, they say, we're doing this in the name of Islam, and then they always quote these justifications from foreign policy, whether it be sanctions on Iraq before the invasion, or the so-called weapons of mass destruction before the invasion of Iraq, and drone strikes in Pakistan that kill a lot of innocent people, in Yemen as well. And so, there's a lot of issues at play. I think that there's also just kind of the consequences of the post-colonial period playing themselves out still. A lot of these independent struggles in Muslim majority countries are not far behind. We're talking 50, 60 years in a lot of places, 70 years. So it's a lot of remnants, a lot of things that people are dealing with. So I agree with him at some level, but I think that there's a lot more factors in that, basically.
Yeah. I have to think. That's actually something to really think of. It's a much more complex question than that.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback it a little bit, I think that people always talk about terrorism as, in our modern times, a religious issue, and I personally don't actually think it's a religious issue. Again, there's a portion of it that has to do with false religious interpretation, but I think that it's mostly a social political issue. And so when we throw all the emphasis on the religion side it kind of, it's in many ways it can be self-serving, and that we don't have to look at ourselves in the mirror. A lot of times, just people ask us about issues that are going on all over the world. I grew up in Southern California. What do I have to do with like women driving in Saudi Arabia? For me, my concern is, as an American, we don't look ourselves in the mirror as much as we should on a lot of these issues. So, put the blame somewhere else and kind of blame it on the religion. But I don't think that that's the true issue. I think it's social political.
Okay, so my next question, I'm not sure that you'll be able to answer before we have to take a break, but in your blog to the Safa Center, you said the following: I believe that our responsibility and chance to positively impact the perception of the public in relation to Muslims and help them see the true beauty of Islam is by opening ourselves up to engage more with people in our personal and public lives. This is simple, but it actually works. This Pew study found that people who knew Muslims looked significantly more favorably upon the faith than those who did not. So my question is, before we take a break, in what way or ways are you looking toward the goal of opening up Islam to others? How would that look? Where would that go? And we'll be back in a second.
Sure.